Hey everyone, my name's Ari, and I am the founder of ParadoxPort, which creates products and journals that help people pursue goals and grow in life through kind of fun gamified formats. My background is in behavioral science. I worked at large corporations for a while doing research on how to help leaders be their best selves and perform better and change behaviors. And now I'm taking that skill set and trying to apply it to kind of more consumer-facing products that are just fun and whimsical and silly and full of adventure.
Okay, just your few sentences there already looks like 15 questions I want to ask, and I don't know where to start, so I'll just let curiosity lead. Will you tell me what the name of your company, ParadoxPort, means to you? I do like the logo is like a sail ship, but it's an interest. It could go in a million ways. So what does that mean to you?
Absolutely, yeah. It's got a couple of kind of meanings woven through it. The paradox kind of portion of it is just that I think like so much of behavior change and so much of the human mind is kind of a paradox, in the sense that like sometimes, behavior change, like you throw everything at it, you're trying your hardest to build habits and like nothing works. And then sometimes you just relax and aren't doing something and it starts working all of a sudden. And there's like no clear path towards success. I think like everything is variable. Everything depends on your context, depends on the rhythms that you're currently experiencing in your life. So it's a bit of a paradox. And just in general, like the human mind, we have so many identities within us, so many competing needs, desires that are all kind of woven together that form who we are. And then the port portion of that is kind of like I just had like an image in my head of like an actual port, like a seaport, where you're setting sail from that into the unknown, and you're kind of navigating those adventures that come and the paradoxes that arise, and it kind of was just meant to give it like that kind of spirit of adventure, and that's kind of what the logo is. It's like a ship setting sail from a book, sort of. So it's like the kind of fantasy. Um, Spirit with kind of some path towards adventure woven in there.
Did the name of the company come before and I have it here, the Just Roll With It journal, or did the Just Roll With It journal come before the name of the company?
The Just Roll With It actually came first.
Okay.
Initially, I was just gonna try and kind of build my brand more around that, but to be honest, part of it was that there was already a couple other like podcasts and programs out there that had that name. So I was having some issues with name overlap, and I decided anyway that long term I don't want to just be kind of a single product thing. I really want to be more of a micro publishing company that kind of has a couple of different products that are out there.
Okay, before I ask you about how you came to write the journal, I'm curious. You talked about the paradox at the heart of the name of the company, and you mentioned something I thought was interesting that seems like a difference between like kind of force and ease in habits. And I think generally people think of when they're forming habits, they think of force. But it's funny if you a lot of Taoist, Buddhist, Eastern spirituality, Eastern religion, philosophy stuff is all about no flow. If you're pushing hard, you're doing it wrong. And I think that's people's general understanding, my feel of habit in America is that it feels like a forced thing. I have a thing I think I should do. I have a self that wants something and it needs to make this other self that does things do it and want it too. So how can I formulate this habit to trick myself into wanting it or blah blah blah, so it's elaborate. In your journal, I mean, we could lead to the journal, but in your own philosophy, when these habits get formed, do you feel like there's a lot of willpower exertion, or do you feel like, no, 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 these things come in the back door? It's when you set the thing up and relax and calm down that these habits happen from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that's kind of one of the central paradoxes that is at the core of my being.
Core of your
And
being, okay.
one that I've been working on my whole life, and one that I don't think I actually yet have satisfying answers to. Um, but I can riff on it a little bit. I think
Yeah.
it's like all things, it's kind of a yes and to both options. Where
Okay.
I think that that our society, in America and Western culture in general, we do put way too much emphasis on the force end of things. And I think, there's all of the kind of hustle culture, toxic productivity, all of that sort of thing that I very much try to take a stand against throughout the book. And whether or not I do a good job of that remains to be seen, but I try to make it more gentle, forgiving, a lot more about just reflection and testing things out and experimentation rather than like sticking to the grind every single day and like just hustle until you get there, and it's all about an indomitable spirit and willpower. So like that being said, you know there's always a tension between sort of acceptance and like fighting for something and taking a stand. And, I think you do need to have the ability to sometimes step up and say, no, this is what I need to do. Like, for example, if you're really struggling with, let's say, addiction or something like that, like if you have a substance use issue, you're going to need to take a stand at some point. Just relaxing into it and letting things pass isn't sufficient to getting you out of that. But at the same time, sometimes people just shift out of those things. Sometimes you wait enough time, your life context changes, and it becomes less of a problem. So it's really both. I think it's like up to you to kind of determine like it's sort of there's a flow in life. There are times to take stands, and there are times to let your foot off the gas pedal and just relax into it and see what happens.
Okay, well this is perfect because this does lead me to the journal. I feel like having used Fabulous. I don't know. So you talked about kind of behavioral psychology. So there's Fabulous, been around a long time. So when it first started, I feel like it's very different from what it does now. This smartphone app that is designed to kind of enact change in your life or help you get through mental barriers or physical barriers or habitual barriers. I kind of these are the techniques that are used. This is what you should do. It treats it very gently, but it still says here are the things you're supposed to do and here's how you're supposed to do it. And I noticed even from the beginning in this journal, kind of two things. One is I think if you want to playfully embody a character class in this, because it is kind of based on a fantasy RPG, if you feel like a warrior or you feel like a wizard or you feel like a monk, you can travel those kind of archetypes in your own way and take on the tools in your own way versus there is a way you're supposed to use this tool. So there feels like an approach people can take different things for their own personal sensibilities. And also, you make it very clear, even from the very beginning, the first few pages, you give what I like is like the toss away clause. And if this doesn't work, remember to throw this out, which is a thing that's popular in RPG books where they say, don't fixate on the rules. If your group is having fun and you don't want to use this rule, to throw it out. The rule is not the important part. It's something else. And you make that clear in the beginning. So I don't know if you want to, the character
Exactly.
class idea was great. And the sense that, and if it doesn't work, don't worry. Even if it's all scientifically proven, toss it and do something else.
Totally. Yeah, yeah. And I did kind of draw on that energy from some, D&D books and all of that. Totally. So yeah, I mean, I kind of just viewed the whole, both the archetypes and what in the journal I call as callings, which is kind of like your general focus area that you want to work on over the duration of the next few months. Um, I viewed those as like more like centers of gravity rather than like strict paths that you have to walk. They're like things that you set in your mind that should be pulling you towards some destination rather than describing exactly how you get there. Um, so that was very intentional. I didn't want to say like, if you're a fighter, you're just focused on going to the gym 30 days or 30 minutes for 30 days or whatever like that might be. It was much more like pick something, pick like you want to be a fighter, and yeah, you maybe want to work on your physical fitness or whatever it might be, but from that point on it's kind of like up to you to determine how exactly that looks in your life. And most importantly, anytime you're working towards that, even if it's like really small or not exactly the way that you had initially envisioned, that's still a success. It's like you're moving in the right direction. Celebrate those small things. As long as you're showing up, opening the journal, and trying a little bit, you're going to be okay.
Okay, so you mentioned these callings, like again, monk and wizard and druid and paladin, things that come out of kind of traditional fantasy RPG stuff. So tell me, is that something that was formative in your life, and so you came to it, or did you glom onto it later? Like, oh, this what a fantastic uh, technique or a metaphor or an art form I could use to craft my behavioral psychology stuff into.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. Well, I obviously enjoyed various games throughout my life, from video games to board games to RPGs. So that was always in the back of my head. I don't think I really came to like a specific realization until later that it could be useful to think about archetypes in the kind of RPG sense to facilitate behavior change. But I did notice that like within myself, sometimes I do a bit of a thing where like if I'm not sure how to proceed or how to behave, I kind of like try to step into like if I was something different, if I was like, a powerful leader right now, or if I was like a caring, nurturing person right now, what would I do? And I've kind of found that ability to shift into like a different perspective and embody a different feeling within myself to be really helpful. So I think that was part of where that inspiration came. But then again, it's kind of tying back to the thing I was saying later about callings and stuff. It's just really useful to have like a directional anchor, like something that you're moving towards without, describing and prescribing exactly what it involves to get there.
So when tell me a little bit about the formation of the book and wherever you were doing before led to it, because you mentioned, oh, I was working with executives, I'm working in kind of the corporate industry structure, talking about behavioral psychology to kind of get people to do things or help them if they're unable to do things in their job or their life, getting them over that hump to something else. How did you decide to translate that into a book with a map and random encounters and using dice for the mass market?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say there's a clean narrative.
Wait, can I ask one question?
Yes.
In any of the stuff you did with the more buttoned down corporate world, did you incorporate any of these fantasy or playful or play techniques with those people, or is that kind of outside of that?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I always that's actually not in my most recent chapter at a large corporation. I didn't do that. Earlier, when I was in university, there I did do some work on like gamification stuff where we were designing trainings to help like budding college entrepreneurs learn about the entrepreneurial landscape, and there was like point systems and various things, but
Yeah.
it was not fantasy in any way. And that's actually something that, I don't know if this will open up a whole nother can of worms, but something that I am like kind of reactive to, maybe too much so, but like uh, the whole gamification industry has like really blown up over the last 10 or so years. And, I think there's something there that is worthwhile, but also I think many times it's just like really superficial where there are badges and stars and metrics and tracking things in a corporate setting where it's like it's not fun. You can try to convince yourself as much as you want that you're making something fun, but I mean, it's only so satisfying to see like, I got a badge for, showing up on time every day or whatever. It's like that's only going to go so far in creating an immersive, engaging experience. So I don't
Also,
know.
I
I
want to
think
say I have that same reactivity. Part of the reason I saw the ad and I'm like, whatever. How many of these journals or apps have I seen again using gamification to like take a normal thing and put a thin veneer of fun and play over it and pretend you're having fun.
right,
Yeah.
right. And I mean, I have to be honest. I'm not totally sure if I succeeded. Like, the journal is out there. It's a product. I think people are liking it, but it's an ongoing, evolving journey in myself of how to kind of thread these, yeah, just how to kind of walk that path and not fall into just the veneer of like gamification and like yeah, just that whole world where you're taking metrics that like don't really need to be quantified, quantifying them and then trying to like make it fun. That I wanted to avoid. So I really did try to build something that is like at the very least like a standalone engaging product that like there's something in there. There's a narrative, there's a world, there's something a little bit more than just like, ah, I got another piece of armor for my character. I don't know if you've messed around with Habitica or anything like that. There's some other apps out
Yeah, I've
there.
toyed with a bunch of those in little
Yeah.
ways. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that just never really did it for me. But I still like, despite those things not doing it for me, I still felt like there's something there. Like I didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and just be like, because there's so many kind of poor attempts at gamification, um, I didn't want to say that then gamification is useless because I don't know, fun and play I think is one of the most powerful forces that we have as humans. So I don't know. I wanted to try and channel that a little bit.
But you could have just made you could have made any of 100,000 gentle habit tracking journals or calendars or apps. So you could have been nice to people and you could have tried to pedagogically scaffold the learning about the habit, and you didn't need a narrative and you didn't need the thing about the darkness and you didn't need to have it have these fantasy callings or anything. So why did that call to you? Why did you ultimately decide I want to do gamification better with a real story and a real game inside?
I mean, just because it feels more fun, man. Like I don't know, it just at the end of the day, you know, you don't play Skyrim or whatever because it like teaches you the rules well and you learn how to progress through. You play because it's
Right.
like actually kind of fun to be in that world. And you know, again, I have to be honest, like there's only so much I could do in the format of the journal, right? There's only so many pages. Uh, Branching narratives are really complicated, so I couldn't like create too much of a complex story. It's like there's some evolving things, but for those who are listening, it's kind of like a a choose your own adventure type thing where depending on where you land each day on this map grid, different things will happen to you. So with a system like that, there's like about 100 pages of like various events that can happen, maybe a little bit less. Um, so you can only weave so much out of that, but still it seemed worth trying. And it seemed like, I don't know, if there's just that little curiosity about like what'll happen next day. I want to open this journal. I don't really feel like writing in it today because I'm lazy or whatever, but let me just see what happens on the next page. And that kind of felt inherently a little bit more motivating to me.
What did playtesting look like for this thing? What did playtest, because games get playtested. Somebody designs an early draft, they
Yeah.
hand it off to people to use. How I'm curious with this one because it involved people trying things out in their own life. What did playtest look like using early drafts of the journal?
Um, Well, hard to do. I did not get as much feedback as I would have liked, and I think there is still lots of room for growth and development in the second edition, which I'm currently working on. Now that it's in people's hands, I am getting a lot more feedback and data. Early playtesting was just me sending it out to a bunch of family and friends, and then people on Reddit, basically people who like, I'd post about it in various Reddit forums, and some people would
I bought it off your
volunteer.
Reddit ad. That's how I
Yeah,
found out about it.
there you go. Um, so and people would volunteer to review it and to give it a go. And the hardest thing was like I didn't get very much data past like a couple of weeks, which it's hard to ask someone to play a product that is still kind of janky and broken for multiple, like for an extended period of time.
Right. For
Um,
months. I mean,
for
really, the
months,
journal is set up
exactly.
now
So
for
that
like its
was
90-day
it
track.
was
Yeah.
almost an impossible ask because I'm like, try this thing that doesn't really work yet for 90 days. It's one thing like just making a board game and sitting down and being like, play this for an hour. Like,
Yes.
sure. Um, so, I kind of had to work with what I got. And, I obviously used it a lot on myself. And then I would kind of ask different people to look at different parts of it so that I could kind of try to minimize what they needed to focus on. But I, like, actually, I think in playtesting, I didn't get a single person who, like, did it for more than, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks. Um, so
And that's a
then,
lot because as opposed to a board game where you're going to sit down and play this board game, even let's say it's a long one, 3 hours he's asking us to play this, we're done. This one asks you to every day or on recurringly for weeks and months revisit this and do this. So that is, yeah, it is just a hard ask.
It is. And but then, the thing that then like made me insecure is like, is it, that they're only willing to do it for a couple weeks because the idea is bad and it's not working, or is it because like it's just too big of an ask at an early stage? It's like, and I think some of my fears at least have been assuaged in that, like, not everyone sticks with this. Because like sticking with anything is hard. Most people who buy a journal off the shelf don't use it for more than a
Totally.
week or two.
Yes.
So like, sure, that's, you got that baseline level of just like atrophy regardless. So there's that. But I have, it's been in people's hands for I think a month and a half now or something along those lines. And there have been multiple people who've messaged me who are, using it every day and loving it. So I do know there's at least a cohort of people who commit
Oh
to
wait,
it.
holy crap! So your ad campaign really is, it is now available, and now it's in people's. So it's literally only this version that I have has only been out there for X number of weeks.
Yeah, well, so
Wow.
yes,
Okay.
we did a Kickstarter,
Yes.
and the Kickstarter ended like end of the summer,
Okay.
August or so, and then after that it was manufacturing, and then the journals were shipped out. Most of them got into people's hands like right at the start of the year. So that was kind of the first. I shipped out the 500 copies or whatever. On January 1st. And then since then, I've been hearing from people. And then also now I've been pushing into, kind of just trying to actually see if I can translate some of that Kickstarter momentum into ongoing sales and to getting it into as many people's hands as possible.
Wait, that's awesome. So forget the fact that the play testing was difficult because you couldn't get now the products out there. And I'm talking to you at this time where nobody's completed this 90-day arc yet. Has any? It's not possible if they're only doing it once a day, even if every day. Could people have they got to the end
No one
of the
I've
story of the
talked to
map?
has yet gotten to the end. You can technically kind of jump around and try to do that. Like I could see it being finishable in more like 2 months instead of three, but
Yeah.
just kind of the way some of the encounters are set up with the kind of leveling progression, that would be very hard, and you'd have to get some really lucky rolls.
Was it so? We can talk about the. I don't need. I don't have a big axe to grind. It sounded like when you had an early version that people looked at. If I read the Reddits correctly, the subreddits correctly, you had some. Hey, we got some AI stuff in here, and the reality is, if I don't get money through Kickstarter or I don't get money from purchases, I can't afford to pay a real artist to make this real art because everybody jumps up with the screams about the AI art. So forget the AI. The rules mechanics, the habit techniques that you had researched and put in, and again, you have sources for people to look at inside the thing,
Mhm.
or the actual fantasy writing. Did you do all of that yourself? Is any of it, did you work with anybody else? And which was your favorite? Was it setting up the game? Was it
Mhm.
writing this narrative flavor text? Or was it really the behind the scenes, the spells where I explain how this behavioral technique works, or the
No, the
psychological
spells
technique
are a
works?
pain in the ass to write.
They're awesome. I really like it. No, we'll have to talk about that later because I thought the idea of the spell is awesome, where you take a technique and you flavor it like a spell, and then say you're conjuring it this your own way. It reminds me of mage games that I played years and years ago, where there's an effect you want, and then you color it your own way. So that's
Yeah,
effectively what
yeah,
you're telling people.
yeah,
Here's the core of the spell. It's going to be colored and flavored any way you want.
yeah. So yeah, the spells took a while. I guess, I mean, let me also just quickly circle back to the AI comment, because
Totally.
initial versions that I posted on the Kickstarter were done with AI art, which was then later, once I started getting a signal that there is actually money incoming, uh, proceeded to replace entirely with human art. But I think that brings me to like a question that also helps answer, or a thought that helps answer your question, which is like just how I think about AI use in general, um, which right now I really try to use it for things that, one, uh, don't bring me joy in some way, or two, don't bring other people joy. So like,
Okay.
I think like coding or something. There's very few people who really love coding or making a website. Like, yeah, sort of. I don't know. But that's like kind of a more innately computer thing. So I have no problem using AI to write some of the backend code on my website or whatever that might be. And like likewise, initially I experimented. I wasn't going to publish it this way, but I just wanted to see how well AI could do on writing some of those scrolls,
Totally.
to do some of the research for me and just get some of the sources in line. And I mean, I guess this was now a year ago, so things have changed a lot since then, but it did not do a very good job at that point in time. It was citing like lots of non-existent sources and things that were, since I am a bit of a subject matter expert in this, I could pretty quickly see being like, no, that's not what Locke and Latham said. Like that is a little bit off. So yeah, then I went through and like, wrote up all that stuff and have a big folder with all of my sources and all of that. So yeah, I mean, in terms of, to answer your original question, what was the most fun, what I enjoyed doing the most, it's hard to pick one thing. I love writing. I think it's really fun just kind of creating quirky little characters and writing some of those little micro interactions where there's just like someone popping up and saying something in kind of a silly, sassy way, or like, I don't know, being dark and gloomy or over dramatic. Like I just kind of like inhabiting those different characters for a short period of time. I don't think I have like the attention or maybe the I don't know, emotional depth or understanding to like really make a full character progression, I think, in like a fantasy novel. But just being able to quickly like jump in and like pretend to be a little character who's, you know, speaking in a funny voice and telling you to go check out this X on your map, like I really enjoyed that part.
Okay, that so I will tell you, so whatever that joy is or the happiness you have writing those, like you've got, it's a blank page for the day and then a blank page and then you've got this thing at the bottom. Oh, the narrator has appeared again for the last time. Oh, or like again, you, whatever, I don't want to spoil it, but you stub your toe or you mash your foot against something. So the little things that the narrator says, the narrator doesn't have to be a fully fledged character to be like, to warn you about the danger and to tell you about how you're the quest. And then you can, it's exactly what you said, you just dribble those things in whenever you, the creator of the journal, feel like it. So it
Exactly.
totally comes through like, oh, it's like a little thing there for that guy.
Yeah, and that was the, not to give too much away, but I wanted it to feel like it's kind of alive. Like it's not just you're doing the exact same thing every day. It's like sometimes, yeah, the narrator will pop up within one of your pages where you weren't expecting to see them. Or, sometimes like one of the encounters will have you like write something that you didn't expect you would have to write down, or like solve a puzzle or something like that. Like I tried to vary it a little bit so that it's not just like same thing, like write down what habits you want to do and roll a dice and see.
So, well, I think you detected whatever. I haven't gotten through all the spells and I haven't read any of the habit books that are out there from beginning to end. But there's some level of routine that needs to be baked in, but routine without not like surprise or playfulness is an absolute grunt. I mean, some people seem to thrive on it. I do this thing every day. I'm hard, I'm strong, and that just fuels them in their habit. But then other times, some of us who are sort of allergic to routine, if there isn't any playful or chaotic or what's the next day going to bring? You already know what the next day is going to bring. Your tennis shoes are next to the bed. You get up, you put your tennis shoes on, you go jog. There's no surprise. That's the habit form. Oh, it's going to be there every day. So that
Yes.
thing you trying to sprinkle in those, but you do know it's going to happen tomorrow. Imagine what could happen tomorrow is interesting.
Yeah, and that actually kind of was one of the core reasons for the name, Just Roll With It, which was that I was kind of doing an experiment on myself where I started rolling a dice in the morning to see if I
Whoa.
would or would not do a given behavior that day. Because I noticed, I don't know if you've had similar experiences. It sounds like you have from what you just said, but like there are some things that you do that if you do them really consistently, the return on investment kind of diminishes over time. Like, what's an example? I don't know, even like exercise or like cold exposure or something like that. If you do, if you take like a cold plunge or a cold shower, the first time you do it, like it kind of sucks, but then you feel really good after it. But if you do that every single day, it just starts to become your new normal and you don't get as much of a benefit from it. At least that was my personal experience. So I wanted to try to vary it up, being like some days I'll do a cold shower, other days I'll do a 20-minute run, and seeing if a bit more variability and unpredictability in it would allow my body to like respond in its fullest capacity.
What did you, so playing with it, obviously you're the n=1, you're the first play tester of this whole procedure and thinking about it. What did you notice the benefits of grinding on a habit versus surprising yourself with the habit?
That's a good question. I think it probably just depends on the habit and like how much it at like also at what stage you are in developing it. I think there's a certain amount of when you're just starting out, you do need consistency to breed automaticity. Like if you're really trying to develop, a running routine or something like that, like until you get to the point where it starts feeling kind of easy, you're not going to really do it. And like that's one of the keys, and I talk about that in one of the spells where it's like you're only really going to do it once it starts feeling like intrinsically rewarding to do it. So in those things, like yeah, I kind of do think you need to set um, and you can do it in small chunks. You don't have to do like a lot at once, but you have to get that automaticity underneath your belt. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard. But then I think there's some other things that like, I played through it once doing more of like a kind of creative approach where I was just trying to focus more on writing and learning some new crafts. I was trying to like get into leather working and things like that. And there, I found it much more fun if I was creating like more variable engagements where it wasn't like I have to sit down every day for 20 minutes and be creative like that. That wasn't really working for me. But like if I rolled a dice and was like, all right, I guess today in that free hour that I have, it's going to be a creative day rather than a me reading or me going on a walk day or whatever it might be. So it's both.
I think you put your. I think it's hard to discern the difference sometimes between a habit that should be more creative and spontaneous, and like if you're not feeling it, you shouldn't do it because the creativity and the spontaneity and the ability to imagine your imagination is important for this. So if you're not feeling it, don't pick it up. But then there's always this other half or this other voice that's there, which is like, well, you're building up your muscle to do that every day, and that's how you get better. So there's kind of like a mastery consistency muscle in there, and then a spontaneous flow muscle, and they're not like always working, they're kind of always in perpetual conflict in some way. So
Absolutely.
it's interesting, it's hard to balance that, or just you have to discern that for yourself. I've found listening to other people about what they do just doesn't match me exactly. They tell you what they do for their habit. It doesn't fit you quite right.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really variable. It's really based on who you are and where you're at. And I think another thing that I was thinking about when I was writing the journal is um, I just lost my train of thought. Uh, we'll circle back to that.
You can wait
Uh,
for it.
oh, yeah, 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 right. I do remember now. Um, sometimes if a habit is too rigid, I guess I would say, um, that can actually be a bit of a problem. And that's I'm somewhat contradicting myself because in the book
It's hard.
I teach you about like cues and rewards and creating consistent cues and consistent rewards that you need to do on a regular basis, right? That's common behavioral science stuff. But um, life changes. Like you go through different chapters of life. Sometimes there's a lot of disruption. If you have kids or if you have, something else in your life that doesn't necessarily allow you to be consistent and do things at the same time every day, then if you're depending on the same cues in the same way every day, like if those stop or change, then sometimes habits can kind of crash and burn. And that can be a bit of a problem. So, I think there's definitely something to be said for kind of trying to pre-build in some of that variability and expectation of variability and pre-planning for what you're going to do when that arises. Um, So I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's all to say. Like, it depends on who you are and what context you're in, but habits can be hard, and trying to make them automatic is really important, but also like they might not be, and that's okay, and then reset and restart from where you're at.
Did you go through a period where you tried learning about habit making or learning about psychology? You went harder on the this is all about the discipline, or did you literally, in your thinking, did you come up in kind of a soup of reading that was like, no, you can't push too hard? Or did you get the like,
Oh no,
if
yeah.
X, then Y, boom? And did you do that in your own life? And what, and for you, was there anything that happened? Was there a moment or a habit that you had that this is the one where you fell off the wagon or realized this hard doesn't work?
Yeah, I mean, I would say definitely like I grew up in, the phase of the internet culture when there just started being like influencers and other people who were like out there, doing TED Talks and all of that sort of stuff about like all different ways to hack and, biohack and improve your productivity and all that
Yes.
sort of stuff. So I definitely grew up immersed in a lot of that culture, and kind of bought into it, and tried it. And I think, the reason why I've pulled away from that to some extent is just like I don't know. That's a way to kind of always feel really bad about yourself and like you're never doing enough. And if you internalize that too much, it feels like if you could just get this one other habit or, stop this one other thing, if you could stop eating sugar, stop drinking alcohol, whatever it is, like, your life would be better. And it just always feels like you're reaching for something that you can't quite grab. So I didn't want to stay immersed in that for too long. I can't remember if there was like a specific habit or something like that. I mean, I know like I went through all of college not being physically active at all, and it took me quite some time to build up a routine. But like, I remember just feeling for years bad about myself for not exercising despite knowing that I should, and trying to motivate myself to grind and get up early and do it, and never doing it, and then like just it's one of those things that we were talking about at the beginning of the conversation, just like a bit of a paradox. Just at one point it just shifted, and like I started being able to run and like enjoy it, and it took some time. I didn't love it at first, but like um it started being something that I craved, and then I started doing it without thinking about it. So I don't know.
Okay, so many thinkers, that thing you just noticed, that moment where there was this thing I didn't want to do, and then there was a shift. What they do is they stop, they look at that moment, and they, whatever, over pathologize, over analyze, systematize. Well, oh, I figured out the habit now. Now I know the magic sauce, and then I'm going to produce a book. I'm going to give a TED talk about this is the magic sauce to your habit because I experienced this epiphany when I did this, and now everyone should hear this epiphany. I don't hear you talking about epiphanies, and so I'm wondering why. Are you just not the psychology that gravitates toward I have epiphanies and then I want to share exactly how this epiphany works? Why
No,
not?
I mean I know it's just so variable and dependent on who
Okay.
you are and where you're at. Um, which, is why I kind of present the book as like here are a bunch of magical spells, which are the kind of behavioral science things. Try them out, experiment with them. Like I don't think any single one of them is going to solve your problems or make you, a perfectly consistent habitual being who does everything they want to do, but like some of them might help, some of them might help your friend and not you, and others might help you. So I don't know, that's just kind of like the I think life approach I take in general is like iterate a lot, try a lot, be curious, have fun, and you're probably going to fail like most of the time, and that's okay.
Are they? I noticed there's a mechanic. So, speaking of failure, there's a mechanic in the rule set and a mechanic in the storyline for a page when you die. So,
Yep.
your hit points go too low and you die. And I don't want to, you don't have to spoil it. I don't know what happens because I refuse to read the page until I die, if I die or not. What the mechanics of the game, so talking about some of this habit forming and the techniques, what is in the game set, how am I trying to explain this? Why did there need to be, was it because a game and it's using hit points and so there has to be a death state where something happens, or is that death state attached to something that happens with people's habits or journeys? Because I'm not there yet, so
Yeah.
without spoiling it, what is the death, how does the death state sit in there? Because
You
that's
know,
failure, the ultimate
yes.
failure with a capital
Yeah.
F.
It's I kind of wanted it to be more of like something isn't quite working here. Whether or not I'm trying to progress too fast or I'm biting off more than I can chew, something hasn't really been working. And to be honest, it could also just be you got unlucky and landed on the
Yeah,
wrong
you rolled
squares
the
at the
dice
wrong
wrong.
time.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Um, but assuming that it's the former, that something is slightly misaligned, I wanted there to just be a moment where you have to check in with that. You have to kind of pause and turn inwards and reflect a little bit. And it's I won't ruin it. It's nothing crazy, but just a quick moment of reflection, reassessing, and then rising again and continuing the journey.
And it is short. It's not like a long, I think it's 1 page or one and a half.
Yeah,
I forget how to,
it's
so
it's
it's
a
very
single
short.
page. Yeah,
So just that's the moment something's not working. You need to rejigger. I think that gets I think that gets ignored in the passion of somebody has a passion to buy a journal. They're going to try this new thing. They're going to start using this new thing. They love it for the first day, the first 7 days, the first 10 days, and then they fall off, and then it goes on the shelf because
yeah,
I failed, and there's no failure state in the journal. It's just, I mean, it'll say, well, if you have trouble, go back to whatever, but it doesn't really recognize it explicitly. So I thought that was, I think it's an interesting move that you get to use in the game, which is, well, if the game didn't work, you just go back and play it again.
right.
Like,
Yeah, yeah,
and recognizing it's like that, as opposed to you get a book and it says in week 1 you're supposed to do this, and week 2 you're supposed to do this, and week 3 you're supposed to do this. If you fall off in week 4, why just go back to week 1? I didn't learn anything. I think, what am I doing here?
yeah. I just as much as possible wanted to make the system forgiving and
Okay.
like you know again, we're going back to the kind of paradox we talked about at the beginning, but a balance of kind and gentle, but also like encouraging and strong. You do have to state some things that you're trying to do. You do have to try to be somewhat consistent while always keeping in mind that, failure is likely and it's also okay. And, you're going to fail countless times in your life. And all that matters is that you just continue on the path with curiosity and some degree of commitment, even if that commitment wavers at times.
I also wanted to say before we left the journal, because I want to ask you about the company and a little bit about what your vision is for where this goes. But I thought the spells, it is a very good form to use. Using each one's got a, it gives it, each one has color, so it's got a rune. But when you dig into the spell, there are no specifics about what you're supposed to pick for this. This is a technique in habit forming or psychology you can use to enact some change or to
Hmm.
change something inwardly or outwardly. Here are the components, like they're the bits. Like here's the whatever, the witch's bane, here's the night hazel, here's the poppy. These are the 3 things in the spell, and this is what they do. But yours are going to look completely different. So you're going to put these things in, and your intention with the spell, and you're going to name it. It's going to be different than what it is right now. So I thought crafting spells, even though you said that was the hard part, I had to go do the research. I had to figure out what that thing was. I think the spell section is an incredibly helpful way to think about these things.
Yeah, I mean that was I think the idea of creating that spell section was the
Yeah.
core kind of idea and insight that really brought life to this book that kind of differentiates it from other habit journals that are out there where it's like you learn about science-based techniques for change, you have room to make them your own and experiment with them, and they're framed in a way of magic, which like I kind of just weirdly find is a little bit empowering where it's not just like dry science. There's like something a little bit more mystical there.
Yes.
And like I mean I think if you think about it, it's the human mind is capable of like projecting into the future and saying that it wants to be something, to do something, to shape the world in some way. And then by setting that goal, like you and the world actually changes. So it's like something in your mind, a spell. that then changes the world. There's something intangible that is then brought into reality, and that kind of feels like magic to me. So I was like, let's roll with that.
Um, okay, so if there's anything we missed about the journal, you want to talk about the journal. If I missed something,
I think we're good
okay.
for now. Yeah, yeah.
It's fantastically fun. I've already taken advantage of, again, your escape clause, which is there's a morning you get up and you don't get to the journal. So you're like, you just remember having just read in the 4-page introduction, oh, yeah, and if you skip a day, it doesn't matter. You're like, oh, okay. If I skip a day, it doesn't matter. And you still do a little this, a little that. You just don't mark it in the journal. So I'm already using the escape clause. I like the journal. I'm fantastically excited to keep trying it.
Amazing.
So you mentioned about ParadoxPort. I think you have a bigger vision for the kinds of things you could do. And so you don't have to reveal anything or tell me your innermost dreams for your company or your entrepreneurship. But where to next? So you're working on a second edition of this. Are there other, I don't know, other avenues, not just particularly products, other avenues you'd like to explore that you're thinking about?
Yeah, there are lots. I did just start a podcast, which is kind of focused on sort of this space of like playful growth, for lack of a
Yeah.
better word. Different people who are creating fun ways to connect with people, to learn about themselves, things along those lines. So that's, my long-term vision is to like have a community of people who are all working on these things where we can cross promote each other and just kind of create like a really tangible niche here. And
Is that why another Etsy creator showed up on your store page
that
recently?
is,
Okay, like
yes,
they have
yes.
that kind of frog art based journal. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So I'm trying to now start reaching out to some other people who I think are doing cool work, who I might, who we could do some sort of partnership with. I'm still like treading the line, and I'm not totally sure how much I want this company to be largely just like my work or people that I hire to do work versus just like more of a central hub for anyone I think is doing cool work, and we can all try and sell on one place and, uh, you know, share whatever profits we make and do something that's a little bit more of a collective.
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of other avenues and other products,
Wait,
there,
can I ask you
yes,
about that before we leave that?
yes,
Is this something you've always been interested in? Is there something about without being judgmental, is there something about the normal for-profit world or even the completely confused money grasping nonprofit world where people have to hunt for money? You're this thing about a collective where we kind of is there some gentler form of the economy or the market you hope to enact on your little
yes,
website?
yes, for sure. And you're picking up on kind of another one of the core streams that runs through me is like, I'm an entrepreneur now. I've launched my company, but like I want to show people out there that there is a way to be successful, to make money without always like, being a part of that toxic productivity culture, that continual grind, always trying to 10x, always trying to grow bigger. Like, I don't want this to be a massive thing where I'm a multimillionaire. I want to make enough money to live my like, you know, nice life here in Portugal and be okay with that, and then bring in other people into the fold who can also benefit from it, and then start leading a similar life to the one that I'm leading. So yeah, that's, I don't know. I grew up in a very kind of alternative hippie family, so I think that kind of thread runs through me for sure as well. And not that I'm like totally anti-capitalist either. I think there's some beauty there, and I think there's something to be said for stepping out into the world and creating something and benefiting from it, but within reason. Like, yeah, why go that far?
I think I'm not sure because I think the initial ad, and I maybe only thought about it for a day or two, saw it, looked at it, left, came back, and thought, oh, if it's calling to me, I should buy it. I think there was a sense in which this, being on the internet all the time, with the best of intentions, people who have products they love, the current marketing and advertising techniques that are used online are relentless and unending. So if you look at something, it never leaves until you buy it. The system the system processes your
Yeah.
traffic and looks at what you saw, and somebody's paying to not let go of that. And so you give somebody, it's 15% off. It's constant advertisement, everything. So I don't know. Maybe there was something in what you did, which is there's the ad. You go to the website. There's a store page.
Well, to
Like
be
I don't, and it
completely
didn't harangue. Are
honest,
you going to harangue me now for like?
to be completely honest, I just have no idea what I'm doing with marketing. So that
Oh,
was
good.
just
So
like
I don't. It was good for my soul. It felt good.
good. Yeah, that was just the only thing I could figure out how to do. So
Okay.
I'm just trying to keep things simple right now. And I am not a social media native. I try to stay away from a lot of social media, to be honest,
Okay.
but I've had to kind of step into that space a little bit because at this point, that's the only way people are ever going to find this. So I'm doing what I can and, trying to, get it in front of as many people who might enjoy it. But that's honestly been one of the biggest challenges of this whole thing for sure.
Okay.
So, yeah.
I mean, there is a way to, obviously there's a way to sell more of your product, but I feel like looking out at the world, and especially on the internet, in my smartphone, on my laptop, iPad, I feel like the current culture of trying to sell me things is just so relentless that if there's
Yeah.
an unrelentless, a non-relentless version of that, it maybe it doesn't get you seen as easily or doesn't generate as much immediate income in the moment, but it is kind of leads to what I'm finding here is there's a vibe, there's an ethos, there's a reason your calling is coming out in this product. And so I would hate to see that calling at some point.
Well,
I mean, it would be great if you made a bunch of money, but I'd hate to see ParadoxPort get sold to like whatever.
Yes, I have no plans to sell to anyone or do anything along those lines, but it is good to keep in mind that there are ways to do advertising that feel more authentic to me and that feel a little bit more in line with the product that I've actually built. And yeah, that just thank you for surfacing that. I'll have to do some more reflecting on that, but I think there is a way to make more humane uh, outreach in social media interactions. So yeah,
And again, because of the positive experience, I bought I'm like, well, if I'm buying you have this PDF that's cheap. And so I got that. And then I noticed again, the past few days, whenever it came up, that other journal popped up and I'm like, well, do I need another journal right now? But like, maybe when this one's done, I'll immediately go to the second one that ParadoxPort offers, which is that Etsy creators one. Cause it looked interesting. So yeah, all that to say that I know it's still in the budding stage, but I think the fact that you're sensitive to, I feel this calling, I have this thing I'm trying, it's coming from me authentically. I think right now that feels like it comes through. So I will be fascinatedly watching the evolution of your website and your product offerings.
beautiful. Well, I hope I evolve in a way that you can feel good about and that I can feel good about.
Right. To me, because of my personality, that's the most important part.
Yeah.
Creators that seem like they're happy with what they're making and they're not, it's coming out of a creative, helpful, hardworking versus kind of scared, fear-based, like I got to get this now.
Yeah.
I got to, taking advantage. So
Totally.
yeah.
Good to keep in mind.
Is there anything you thought we didn't hit about the journal or about ParadoxPort or
Yeah.
if you don't have anything, I would have one closing question, but if you have something, I'd love it. If there's
Just
anything.
real quick, yeah. There are quite a few number of products that are in the works. Not sure exactly when they will be coming out. One of them is kind of like a complimentary deck of cards that kind of facilitates.
That's good because I took your advice and you literally, again, in one of your escape clauses in the box says, feel free to cut the pages out of your journal.
Yep.
And that's exactly, the journal is ephemeral. Why not rip
Exactly.
the pages out and
Yeah,
cut them?
yeah.
So I did. I took the scissors and.
But so building on that idea of kind of the side quests, I'm making like an expansion deck that has some of those side quests for life as
Awesome.
well, but also can actually act as a standalone game. And crucially, it can be like a multiplayer game where you kind of challenge a friend to do various things and you go back and forth, and there's some objective that you're both trying to reach, either cooperatively or competitively. But it's like, exchanging little challenges with your friend, like, do this today or do that today, and, that sort of thing.
Okay, that is brilliant because I think one thing that I used to play role playing games and I think I thought I was doing them for the game long ago. I don't play them as much anymore, but I was experimenting with things that I would want to see in my life inside the role playing game.
Hmm.
I'm not this kind of
Exactly.
person. Could I be that kind of person? So this idea that you're developing in this space where there's these games that are that game connecting to relationality, connecting socially to other people, and enacting things in the world. That's the thing that doesn't interest me oftentimes about role playing games now. The people there to play the game, we're not enacting anything. So this card deck is like, oh no, it exists in the. It's a game, and it may have fantasy or imaginative elements, but it exists in the world and does things in the world.
Yep, that is the
That's
idea.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's a couple other things coming down the pipeline. I guess I probably won't go into them right now, but the website is ParadoxPort.com, and if you sign up for our newsletter or follow the various social medias that you'll also find on that website, you'll be some of the first to know when those products do come out.